The year is 1962. Stan Lee had just come up with the idea for Spider-Man, but Marvel Comics was convinced that the character would be a total flop. If Stan Lee's boss had his way, the world's most famous superhero would have been tossed in the bin, and Spider-Man as we know him today wouldn't exist. This is the story of how Stan Lee went behind Marvel's back to bring us one of the most relatable superheroes of all time. This was during a time where superheroes like Superman, Batman and Captain America already existed. Stan himself had already co-created Thor, the Fantastic Four and the Hulk, but Marvel wanted something fresh. So Stan was sat at his desk, desperately trying to invent a new hero, and he wanted this one to appeal to teenagers. He saw a fly crawling on the wall and thought, if I could get a superhero that could stick to walls and crawl on them, man, that would be groovy. This was the 60s, remember? He ran through names like Flyman and Mosquito Man, finally landing on Spider-Man. It sounded dramatic and rolled off the tongue. But when he pitched it to his publisher, Martin Goodman, the reaction was brutal. Goodman told him, "People hate spiders, Stan. That is the worst idea I have ever heard." But lucky for us, Stan couldn't let it go. He had to get it out of his system, and the way he secretly smuggled his forbidden spider idea into a failing comic book changed pop culture history forever. While we watch this Woodburn come together, which is my tribute to an iconic illustration by the man who still holds the title for creating the highest selling Spider-Man comic ever, Todd McFarlane, let's talk about the rebellion Marvel tried to stop. So put yourself in Stan Lee's shoes. How would you publish a character that your boss just explicitly banned? I imagine most people would just drop it and move on to the next idea. That's not what Stan did. You see, Marvel had an anthology comic book series called Amazing Fantasy, and it was performing so poorly it was being cancelled with issue number 15. Stan saw his chance. Because the book was already dead, nobody was paying attention to what went inside. He realised this was his only shot. Stan slipped Spider-Man into that final issue, teamed up with artist Steve Ditko to draw the comic, and his old buddy Jack Kirby to draw the iconic cover, and they put it on Stan's. This was Spider-Man's first ever public appearance. Stan figured at least he got to see his character in print before it vanished. Stan had moved on to other projects and had completely forgotten about Spider-Man, but 1 month later the sales numbers came in. Amazing Fantasy number 15 wasn't just a hit, it was one of the highest selling comics Marvel had ever published. Goodman, Stan's boss from earlier, allegedly ran into Stan's office and shouted, "Stan, remember that character we both love so much, Spider-Man? Let's give him his own series." That risky, defiant gamble by Stan Lee birthed an empire. Spider-Man would get his own series started in March 1963 and is still published to this day. Decades later, artists like Todd McFarlane would redefine the character entirely. If you're a fan of comics, you know McFarlane's work on The Amazing Spider-Man in the late 80s to 90s completely changed the game. McFarlane was even given his very own Spider-Man series that he wrote and illustrated, simply named Spider-Man. His hyper-detailed spaghetti webbing and those massive, aggressive eyes are what I'm trying to capture on this piece of wood right now. I wanted to pay homage to his legendary art style because this is the definitive Spider-Man look from my childhood. I went through a huge Spider-Man phase when I was a kid, and that childhood obsession started on rainy Sunday mornings, sitting on my grandparents' carpet watching the 1994 animated series. I loved everything about that show, from the awesome opening soundtrack to the timeless characters it introduced me to, from Venom and Rhino to Mysterio and Chameleon, and even the Kingpin. Man, I really need to go back and watch that show. But getting back to the story, in 1995 my Spider-Man obsession grew. I'll never forget my stepdad walking through the door. He was holding 2 comic books. He was an X-Men fan, so he bought himself Essential X-Men number 2. He must have missed issue number 1. Then he handed me this comic book, Astonishing Spider-Man number 1, featuring an iconic shiny gold foil cover. Astonishing Spider-Man, as well as Essential X-Men here in the UK, didn't have a dedicated storyline. They were more of a collection of stories taken from the various main comic series like Spider-Man Unlimited and Spectacular Spider-Man. I used to spend hours reading these comics and trying to draw the logo and characters, but reading it wasn't enough. I became convinced I could climb walls. Now, just past my bedroom door, there were 2 narrow walls, so I used to wedge my hands and feet against both sides, and I used to shimmy all the way to the ceiling like a budget Peter Parker. It made me feel like an absolute superhero. That wasn't until one of the many times I was doing my Spider-Man trick on the wall, my mum opened the door and knocked me clean off the walls and onto the floor. She was not pleased, to say the least. And even to this day, I was recently doing my garden and I got quite a bad bite on my arm, and I saw 2 bite marks, and not so secretly, I was hoping that the next day I'd be able to squeeze the middle 2 fingers to my palm to shoot web. I could literally hear my wife's eyes rolling. But that's why Stan Lee's rebellion worked. He didn't just build a hero who fought villains, he created a teenager with real world problems, a kid who got bullied, ignored by the girls, and who felt isolated. He created a character that someone like me, shimmying up my bedroom wall, could actually relate to. So from a failing comic book to a multi-billion-dollar cinematic universe, the evolution hasn't stopped. In fact, it brings us completely to the present day. Right now, Spider-Man Brand New Day is playing in cinemas, and I can't wait to go and watch it. I've seen every Spider-Man film in the cinema since 2002, and I'm not stopping now. Seeing Tom Holland's Peter Parker navigate a world where he's completely forgotten feels like it's come full circle. It mirrors the exact same isolation and uphill battle Stan Lee fought back in 1962. The actors change, the technology changes, but the heart of Spidey stays the same. He's just a guy trying to do the right thing against impossible odds. It feels completely surreal that a character I used to draw and idolise as a kid is still such a massive part of my life. And that brings us to the final piece. From a fly on a wall in 1962 to a gold foil comic book in 1995, all the way up to this piece of scorched wood. If you love pop culture, satisfying art, or just want to see what character I burn next, please hit the subscribe button. It helps a small channel like mine more than you know. And check out the pinned comment below to tell me your very first Spider-Man memory, and let me know who or what franchise I should woodburn next. My name's Rob, and welcome to Feelburn. I'll see you in the next one.